Confidence at the poker table. Probably the most important thing at the table you can have. I think it's the most important aspect of poker, is having the ability to be confident. I think that this is better even than actual skill in a lot of cases. It's 50-50. Now, when we're talking about confidence, I want to break this down into two aspects, okay? The first one is confidence within ourselves, meaning our self-esteem, how confident we are in our own poker skills and our game, our ability to see the table, see what's happening, our skill sets and everything like that. This is a lot more to do within what we believe about ourselves. Whereas the second thing I want to talk about is without or outside confidence. This is basically projected confidence, how to be seen as somebody that's confident and sure of themselves whenever you're at the tables. So breaking this down into two aspects, they're both very important and they both have to do with confidence. But what I want to do is I want to break each one down individually and have 3 suggestions for each one. Okay, so first we're going to talk about confidence within ourselves. How do we actually play with more confidence? Okay, where this really begins is it starts with a battle in our own heads with fear. Fear versus confidence. It's a very interesting relationship. And it's something that even the best of players, the best of all of us go through this. Even in life, in anything that we do, it's actually one of the most important things. And it happens subconsciously a lot of times, right? Like it happens without us even realizing that we feel these emotions of fear, or that we're more sure of ourselves when we're feeling confident. And what's interesting is the relationship between these two, because the greater we have our fear, you'll notice that it's the lower the confidence we feel. It's the same way. The more confident we are, the less fear that we'll have. So instead of so much focusing on trying to become more confident, one of the best strategies that I like to implement in my life in all aspects, but especially in poker, is look for ways to eliminate fear. If we can find ways to legitimately eliminate fear in our poker game, we will have no option but to feel more confident, and you'll be a much stronger player. Okay? And that starts from within. So the first step, I'm going to change this color because blue is awesome. Okay, so the first step is to have more money. It sounds really simple, but the truth is that most poker players are playing with money that they can't afford to lose. And I hate to say it like that, but I'm calling it out as it is. Games in Texas, even the 1-2 games, the $1 and $2 stakes, they play way bigger than they're really supposed to play. And $500 or $1,000 is not a lot of money. That can literally go in one single hand. Like that is like one bad session, right? And so what's happening is a lot of people are playing with money that they can't afford to lose. And it's kind of embarrassing to admit that. So it takes a lot of humility, but you got to really be honest with yourself. And like, if you are playing with money and you lose a hand and it's starting to kind of hurt, it's starting to feel like, man, like that's like really like starting to get ready to touch my rent money, or that's like very painful for me to lose. I need that money. Then you should really like think about taking a step back and lowering your stakes, because when you're playing with money you can't afford to lose, you're not going to be making the bluffs you should make, or you're not going to be making the hero calls that you should make sometimes, because you can't afford to be wrong sometimes. And therefore, you're going to have less confidence if you don't have more money. So what I would suggest is just start making more money. I'm not saying you have to become some millionaire. You don't got to become like super wealthy. You just got to make more money so that you can be able to play comfortably. Just like not have to think about the money so much, and be able to just take a win or take a loss and not have to be. You don't want to be winning $500 and be so excited about $500, and you don't want to be able to lose $500 and be so sad that you lost $500. It shouldn't be that much of a big deal to you. It should be more about the game and you're working on yourself versus like being so obsessed with the money. And be honest with yourself and analyze yourself and really check your emotions and see if the money's a little beyond what you should be playing. And I'm calling it out. Like, I mean, I see it all the time, and honestly, that's really like one of the biggest leaks in most poker players' games is they're just playing beyond their means. So that's just like the number one practical way, and I think all the poker pro friends that I have would say that this is literally one of the most practical ways to increase your confidence when you're playing, is just have a bigger bankroll or just have more money to play with. Now we're going to go to number two. Number two, this is taught to me by Ben CV, a super, super good poker pro. I was listening to some of his content and I noticed that my game had kind of become stagnant. You know, I started winning right off the bat, I started losing, started getting better, and then I kind of stagnated, right? And I was making a little bit, but I wasn't really I wasn't feeling as confident. You know, I wanted to find a way to actually like get my game to the next level where I was making more money. And I noticed a huge leak, and this is something that even the best of the poker players are doing, at least in Texas. And the answer is play better cards. It's literally that simple. Stop playing crappy hands. Like, it's so tempting because everybody's doing it. Everybody's playing bad cards all the time, and it just gets so tempting to gamble, and it just gets so tempting to create those bad habits. But the reality is that you're actually losing more than just the money that it costs to play bad cards, but you're losing confidence. You're losing out on confidence because when you play a bad hand, you don't have a strong enough hand to win most of the time. So therefore you have to bluff a lot. And when you get caught bluffing and it's just, you're getting two pair over two pair, worse, you have a worse two pair, you're just getting frustrated, and you're gonna like, maybe not even realize it, but you're gonna be playing with less confidence. So if you're looking at your game and you're kind of like losing or you're stagnating, just slow down and start playing better cards. You don't have to be a nit. I'm not saying be tight. I'm saying have a tighter range pre-flop. You can still bluff. You can still be aggressive. You don't have to play only aces. You can play suited connectors, play pocket pairs, suited gappers, Broadway cards, big pocket pairs, right? Like any playable hands, but don't be playing your Jack 5 offsuit. Quit playing King 7 suited because it's suited. Like if you play a bad hand, don't get all frustrated that you're like not winning as much, and just realize that it's kind of like, it's good to take a step back and tighten up your range to get back to that fundamental confidence. That fundamental confidence is really where you can build off of and start getting more creative with certain hands and certain spots down the road. Okay. Now the last thing that we're going to talk about, besides having more money, playing better cards, is playing in position. And this is very fundamental. Everybody knows position is awesome. Like, you hear that all the time. Maybe we can go over more exactly why position is so awesome, like all the little things. But you'll notice that all I'm saying is, if you're struggling, if you're on a downswing, or if you're running bad, or if you're kind of like, you're not feeling like you're in poker shape, or you're feeling like you're just, man, like I'm just off my game lately. Just start playing more hands in position and less hands out of position. Like, just fold more hands out of position that you normally would get, and play in position until you get that confidence back. Because playing in position is so advantageous. People don't realize what comes with this, especially at the low stakes, at the 1-2 stakes. Like, just playing more hands in position, playing better cards, and having more money, the combination of that, you're just going to feel so much more confident. You're just going to feel way more confident, and you're going to be a lot stronger of a player at the table. It's just like literally a fact. So those are the three most practical ways that any basic player could get super good. And even the most advanced players, we stray away from this. We forget this, right? Like we're playing beyond our means and we're getting fancy with certain cards. We're starting to 3-bet out of position way too often. Like we're just remember the fundamentals is all I'm saying. And that's really how you get back to that confidence, okay? So that's it. Now we're gonna go over the fun part. Projected confidence, outside confidence, right? I'll put outer confidence. How do we look more confident at the table and come across as more capable and competent? Well, I've come up with 3 suggestions. I've talked to a lot of my friends about this, and just from my own personal experience, there's 3 very practical things that I believe are the 3 most relevant. There's going to be more that we can talk about down the road, but I just want to put 3 tips on how to quickly increase your confidence, okay? The first thing has to do with your eyes. We're going to talk about the eyes, okay? And the reason why I want to talk about the eyes is because eyes, you know, they say it's the window to the soul, right? And our eyes reveal things. Also, in our culture, people do things with their eyes and it communicates certain things. For example, the first thing is, I'll put A here, we want to avoid shifty eyes. And what that means is basically like, whenever you're talking to someone, you ever talk to someone and they're like, hi, I'm Brandon, I'm with Poker Athlete. You see my eyes are going like this. It just looks not only not confident, it looks sketchy. And it looks like you're super unsure of what you're doing. And what people do is they associate that with negative things and not confidence. It's opposite of what we're really going for. What we're going for is strength and confidence, and we're sure of ourselves and we're capable players, which is what we want at the table. So even if you are a good player, if you have like shifty eyes, really recognize that that's like people recognize shifty eyes as like weakness and bluffiness, and you can use that to your advantage and however you want. You can pretend to have shifty eyes if you're trying to if you have the nuts and you're trying to make them call you. But just realize like a lot of people are doing this without even meaning to, just because they're nervous. I've done it a lot. I still do it. We all do these things, but just try to be more aware of it, right? The other thing that we want to do with our eyes is we want to soften eyes. And so what happens is usually like, let's say that you're in a big pot. The pot's getting kind of big, right? Like it's getting to where there's some big money in the pot and you're getting kind of nervous. You feel the energy going through your body. And what happens is like a lot of times our eyes kind of will spaz out. Like we'll start opening our eyes big like this, or we'll start kind of squinting our eyes to like look at the cards again. And without meaning to, our eyes kind of spaz out and they basically communicate the energy that we're feeling in our bodies. And so what you want to do is no matter what craziness happens, no matter when somebody makes big bets, whenever scary cards come on the river or whatever's happening, you want to be able to remain under composure. Keep your composure and have softer eyes. Like, don't do this. Be like when you're talking to people, you don't want to be like having that deer in the headlights kind of look. It just looks like you're on like a greenie or like a total fish. Like you look like you're just not very sure of what you're doing. Whereas like when there's a lot of high pressure situation and people see you like kind of smile and you like have like soft eyes and you're not even shooken up by it, that looks strong. You know, like you're just like you're under a lot of pressure, but you have all your composure, and that's all communicated in the eyes. So avoid the shifty eyes and learn to soften your eyes, and you'll be able to convey much more confidence just with your eyes alone. One thing that really helps me soften my eyes and avoid the shifty eyes is, here's a tip, is to have a focus point or to have focus points. Meaning sometimes what happens is like crazy things happen and you don't really know what to do with your eyes. So you'll like stare at people, so you'll stare people down, or you're like looking around and you're trying to like you're trying to find something to do with your eyes. And a good trick that I've learned is find a spot on the table and just look at that spot. Bam, just look at it. And my go-to spot is I have 3 spots. One is I look at either the pot, I just look at the pot. I'll look at the spot in front of my chips, or I will look at the opponent's hands if it's a heads-up pot. I like that's kind of different. I don't know a lot of people that do look at people's hands, like their literal hands, but I like to do that because it helps me kind of see how they're reacting, and I don't have to look at them in their eyes, right? Like the awkward stare down, like the old school Western gunslinging contest. I get to just I look at their hands, and it's like I'm able to just kind of see what's going on, and I'm not really giving off a bunch of information. I'm looking down at their hands, and I usually do it like if I'm looking at, like if a player's here, I'm looking like this at their hands, or I'm looking down here. But I'm not really you want to avoid doing this with your eyes a lot, because it just looks like such a lack of confidence. So this is a good little tip. Whatever works for you, just find a couple focus points. The next aspect, and I already kind of talked about this, but I want to talk about the hands. And I'm talking about our literal hands, right? Our literal hands, so much information, debatably more information than our eyes. It's all conveyed through our hands. So basically what you want to do is, step number 1 is avoid spazzy hands. Usually I've seen so many times where a player will just kind of not know what to do, and they make a big bet, and they didn't really think about it ahead of time. So they make a big bet, and then they're just kind of sitting there, and it's a big pot, it's a big decision, it's a big bet. Emotions are electricity's flooding through their body, and they're just their hands are just sitting there, and they're trying to keep composed, but then they're kind of moving around. They grab their drink, and then they drink it, and then they just kind of grabbing their chips, and they're just shuffling their chips. They kind of do this, and they look at their watch, and it just looks very, even if you win the hand, if that person wins the hand, it just looks like they have no composure. They're just they look out of control. People will associate this person as just a nervous wreck, like someone that's not very confident. So what I would recommend is avoid spazzy hands, and a good tip for this is have a stance or 2. So just like boxing, right? Like if you're boxing, you get in your stance, right? Like hands up, feet set, you're ready to box. In poker, I like to have stances. My stance, my go-to one is, because I'm a mover, I like to do things with my hands a lot. I am very movement oriented. So I've learned I have to get my hands in a place, or else they start spazzing out when I'm nervous, and it just looks like I'm a freaking nervous wreck. So I put my hand here on the table usually, and I take my left hand and I put it right here, or across me here. So usually like this, just like this, boom. And this is like here, so if I'm sitting down, and I look down, or I'll look up at them, and sometimes I will, I start playing around with other stances, I'll just have my hands in my lap, and I'm just sitting there like this, and so my hands are under the table. But you can experiment with different ones, but my go-to is like this. Sometimes I'm like this, so I'm covering my mouth, because sometimes I feel like my mouth kind of gives away things. So I do this, whatever it is, whatever is yours. I have friends that have their hands on their laps. I have friends that put their hands down like this. I have friends that do this. Friends will do this, whatever your stance is. But I would have a go-to stance. And another tip is not only to have a stance, but tip number 2 is you want to think about your decision, what you're going to do before you do it. So for example, it's your turn and you want to make a bet. Instead of just taking your hands out and thinking of how much you're counting out to bet, the problem with that is you look spazzy. You're thinking, and your thinking is conveying onto the chips, and you're just moving the chips around, you're kind of counting, and it looks spazzy, and sometimes, you can do that if you want, but what I like to do is, I like to think of the number of what I want to bet. So if it's $100, I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to bet $100, and then okay, sounds good. So I'll reach out and get my $100 set, and make a steady, slow movement, boom, and then I'll get my stance. That way my hands don't have a place to start spazzing out. Whereas I've seen players all the time that they just kind of get their chips out and then they just bet, and they're kind of like, they sit there with their hands and then their hands are like this and this. They're like, and they're panicking almost, you know. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but you get my point. So what I would say is think first. Think first, because whenever you can think first, then you go to your stance. That way you don't give off information and you don't look like you're a spazzy player. I would, and the second step I would say for hands is slow and composed. And just remember, when you're making bets, fast, jittery, it's kind of like a fast-talking salesman. People don't generally like that. They feel like it's very sketchy, very like annoying. And when your hands are all over the place and you're just getting your chips like this and you're scattered and throwing things around, it looks very unconfident. But slow, composed, steady, it looks strong. It's steady, it's precise, it's direct. It's very purposeful, right? And people that are calculated and purposeful are more confident than people that are spazzy and panicky. So with your hands and your body movements, try to focus on being just a little bit slower and a little more calculated. When you're done making your move, get back into your stance or get back in whatever position you're getting in and keep that composure about you. Okay. Another tip, by the way, tip 3, be ready for talkers. What I mean by that is sometimes you're doing a good job and you can see it, you're looking confident, and so a good player will start talking to you. They'll talk to you to get you to kind of like fidget because they want to get information from you. They want to see if you're nervous or not. And so sometimes people do a good job to get their hands, and then someone will say, "Do you want to call?" And they'll be like, and they start fidgeting their hands and they'll get their chips, and they don't even realize they're doing that. So be ready for people that are talking to you or trying to distract you or kind of throw you off your game. Keep your composure, breathe, don't freak out, okay? The last tip I'm gonna talk about is gonna be about talking, and like table talk. And it's very simple. I don't think very many people are very good at it. In fact, I know less than 5 people that can table talk well. And so I would recommend, unless you're a very advanced player, avoid it. Like if you're in a hand, stop talking about the hand, like stop talking because you're probably not very good at it, first of all. And you're just like, most of the time when people are talking, it looks bluffy, or you could do it, but just know that you need to practice it. It takes a lot, it's very difficult to talk with composure when you're feeling nervous. Like we're very emotional people, like people are very emotional. And so just keep that in mind when you're talking. I would just avoid it generally, but if you do it, then follow this advice. Stay slow and composed. When you're talking, just talk directly, talk with a little more purpose, and be like, if someone's like, "Do you want to call?" You'd be like, "I'll take a call." Or, "I don't want to call," right? Like, you just say what you're saying with a little more slow and composed rhythms versus like just like talking like a car salesman. Okay, no offense to car salesmen, by the way. I'm just saying. And the last thing I would say about talking is your tone. And this is a very simple thing, but I just hear a lot of people do this, and it's kind of a subtle thing, but it sounds and looks a lot more confident whenever you use a tone at the end of your sentence that goes down. So like whenever someone's saying all in, they look at the dealer and they're like, "All in?" And then they go all in. And it's like, "All in? Like, is this a question? I'm going all in. Like, should I go all in?" It sounds unsure because you're at the end of your sentence. It's a tone up. It sounds like you're not steady. And or people are like 65, 102, like betting 150. Like, and I'm not saying it's like the end of the world, but it just sounds so much more confident whenever you say, "I'm all in." Tone down. "I've thought about this. I'm all in. I made a deliberate decision. This is my choice. I'm all in." Not all in, you know? And so when you do speak with direct confidence in the sense that slow and composed, and say what you say with a tone at the end of your sentence, like that's my statement. Like I'm confident, I'm owning what I say. Boom. It just looks confident. And people are a lot more inclined to respect your bets and respect your plays whenever you look confident. That's it. Let me know if that helps. And these are just my 3 tips on each aspect of inner and outer confidence. But there's so many more. And so share any tips that you have, with the group. These are things that have helped me in my game, and many more to come. Boom.